Welcome back to round 2 of the LEC Summer Playoffs. Rogue took game 1 in a convincing fashion, and Froskurinn Vedius. Whoa, okay.
What's up?
What were you doing?
That was a face. Let's get into Champions Select, because I'm not sure I want to actually have
I was giving you the look that Rogue was giving a Schalke at the end of that game. They're looking to make this a quick 3-0, and if they can continue the performance that they had in game 1, Rogue looked like a terrifying team that, quite frankly, could contest the best in the world.
Like
So-
SKT.
Yes.
Like SKT, yes. So well, we are on the same sides. This time around, the priority pick was the Aatrox that Rogue grabbed from first pick on blue side. I'm curious if Schalke are going to let it go and what kind of adjustments they're going to make. Because so far, everything looks exactly the same.
Yes, Qiyana being banned away once again. Will we see the Aurelia ban? You know, we saw this a lot last week, and I was like,
It's Finn.
why are they banning Aurelia? And then, yeah, a bunch of people told me, like, oh, it's Finn. Finn's this huge Aurelia player. He's really good. I'm like, is it so good that you have to ban it every game? And also, if it is that good, let us see it. Because I want to see why someone is so that good at Aurelia. Like, why it has to be banned every game.
So we had a slight mix-up, a slight change-up from game 1 with the Kennen being banned out instead of the Rumble on the side of Rogue, but immediately they lock in the Aatrox once again.
I just feel like the narrator is like, yes, Aurelia was that much of a problem. They banned it again. Yeah, I agree with this adaptation. So one of the other adaptations that I wanted Schalke to do is to actually put much higher priority on Sylas. We saw how much abuse Inspired was able to deal back on Trick, having a faster jungle clear than the Sejuani. So I feel like by Schalke taking the Sylas, they actually get the best of both worlds. Now, if Rogue picked the Sejuani, which I think they should avoid at this point so they don't give Sylas a free ultimate, they can abuse with that ultimate and also have a very fast jungle clear as well as a flex opportunity.
The risk that they run right now is that if Rogue do not go for Sejuani, Schalke could get Sejuani, Sylas plus Lucian. Because the Sylas is a very common pick into the Akali matchup, and it's something that Abbedagge is also very comfortable on. This was something he ran into Jizuke last week, and I think that you kind of have to lock in the Sejuani now to ensure not only like a strong engage, but also to deny it away from Schalke. But instead, Rogue is sticking to their guns.
Yep.
They're saying that we don't need it. We want to get Woolite on another comfort pick. He's going to play the Kai'Sa once more. They think that it's fine into the Lucian. And we'll see if there are any adaptations. Ooh, I do quite like this adaptation, taking away the Rakan, one of the safe bot laners that often match up with the Kai'Sa. And as I say that, the hovers baited me. We're going to see the Rumble top lane coming out from Odoamne.
It was banned out in game 1, of course, so Odo getting his hands on something that he is very comfortable on.
Now, I don't want to say that it's not Odo's Rumble, but in the LPL, they play a lot of Rumble mid. They play
That's
a lot
true.
of Rumble mid specifically into
To
Akali.
Yeah.
So just gonna throw that one out there. I know that Odo is typically the Rumble player.
The other thing is we're now looking at jungle bans, I guess is what we would assume from the side of Schalke. As I say, there's the Olaf ban coming out from them as well. Last game, they decided to take away the Alistar down towards the bot side of the map. They could look to do the same thing again. I would consider banning away the Rakan, or you could ban away the Nautilus and lock in Rakan for yourself. But then, of course, Rogue could then do Kai'Sa Alistar. So I feel like that regardless of what, if they want to ban a support, Rogue have a lot of options to try and match the 2 versus 2.
And on the other side, I actually expect Rogue to look for double jungle ban here and ban away the Sejuani and the Skarner and take away a lot of Trick's comfort picks. We'll see if they double down on that or try to pinch that support pool.
Oh, that's quite interesting, yeah. Because then you could force them onto something maybe a little more aggressive. And I mean, the second time these 2 teams met and he played Elise, wasn't the best
was not good at all.
performance.
I could have hit more Elise cocoons than he managed to. The Lee Sin will be the ban. It's another jungle ban from the side of Rogue, and with Rakan taking off the cards, Schalke will immediately lock the Alistar.
But by taking away the Alistar from the Kai'Sa Ali combo, this now leaves Inspired up to grab the Skarner. So while Lee Sin has been banned and Sejuani, there's the opportunity here that Rogue take away the pick from Trick anyway.
I really like the Braum answer. I think it's such a good pick. Really good disengage tools as well against the likes of a Rumble. The Alistar. I'm now looking... Do you think they lock in the Skarner here? I feel like that...
I mean, you know it's going to be Skarner if you don't lock it, so it's like, what do you feel comfortable taking into that matchup for Inspired?
I mean, there's
Zach, apparently. Zach is what you feel comfortable playing into that matchup.
Level 6 jungler.
Okay, I was not expecting a Zach. I mean, one of Zach's biggest strengths is that he does act as an engage. You can see the hover of the Nidalee. I know you're excited about it. We don't talk about hovers.
Do it.
So
you
for
talked
now,
about the Rakan hover for an age, Vedius. Let Frost talk about it.
We'll talk about the Zach pick for now. I think that what Rogue's comp was lacking was a form of engage. And what we do know from Rogue is that while they don't often rely on team fighting, it's something that happens a lot. And it does need to come out from somewhere. So if it's not coming out from VandeR, it's going to come out from Inspired.
So something that Schalke's composition was missing was AD damage. So I like the fact that they actually go for the Xin Zhao when you're paired between Sylas and Rumble. It especially makes that top lane so devastating when you can team up the Xin Zhao with a Rumble trying to protect him. Because the thing about Rumble is that he demands a lot of jungle resources because to be effective, he needs to be pushed up into his lane. So I like the adaptation of going for more early game aggression from Trick rather than falling back to his Skarner. Although I love Nidalee. Nidalee is so good into Zach.
Yep. What I love about Schalke's adaptations into game 2 was, okay, our strategy was to get an early game lead in game 1. We weren't aggressive enough. Let's pick more aggressive picks. So now they have a Xin Zhao, they have the Lucian Alistar bot lane, and they have a Rumble. So they have 2 easy lanes to play around, and I expect to see Abbedagge once again grouping up with Trick and looking to play towards side. So again, the question is, can Schalke find this early game lead, or can Rogue mitigate them and stop them from getting upset ahead?
Because that's the thing, it's been a hot minute since we've seen someone like a Zach. Now, Zach's gank windows usually happen around level 4 when he's able to kind of get to one of those lanes. We do need to remind teams that they have a different entrance into lanes, very much like a Rek'Sai. So my eyes are on Inspired and how he's able to get Zach to that level 6 and what he can get done in an early game.
Well, for now, we're going to hear from the Schalke coach. It's Dylan Falco backstage with Laure.
All right, Dylan, tell me about the game plan here. Which lanes need to be ahead for you to succeed in this game?
Well, they're playing Zach this game versus Xin Zhao, so we win jungle really hard early. So I think getting a jungle advantage or an early game advantage would be really good for us.
All right, well, thank you very much, and good luck on game 2. Back to you guys.
Pretty much what you guys said. They want an early game advantage against Zach. That's what Schalke are looking for, investing heavily into the early game. Rogue have a similar composition to game 1, I'd say. A bit of side lane threat, a lot of scaling on their side.
Do want to point out that this time around, because Woolite is not facing Trick Sejuani, he has opted for the teleport as opposed to going for the cleanse. Rogue are one of my favorite teams when they have multiple teleports because they are so good at playing around the map and using numbers advantage with that summoner spell. So
you get spotted if you go for this invade. Schalke just walked by the tower looking for something. Oh, okay, what they were trying to do a flank position on the tribush. That makes more sense. Okay.
So I think
makes a lot more sense.
So what I think Schalke was looking for was to actually set up an invade, or at the very least get this deep vision, because a typical early game jungle path from Zach usually looks like a full clear and starting on the red side. So it's one of the safer sides, something that you often see from things like a Gragas, a Skarner, a Sylas. And so by getting information on where Inspired starts, it makes it a lot easier for Trick to either look for counter ganks, look for invades, and basically look to dictate what Zach is even able to do. Because as we all know, Zach pretty much does nothing in the early game. He has 0 trade power. He costs his own health in order to clear the jungle. He is very susceptible to being killed in the early game.
Level 4 gank window, otherwise level 6. That's basically Zach's play pattern there. I do like a lot of this vision to keep track of him. Again, we do need to remind people that Zach, like Rek'Sai, can have interesting gank paths over walls, especially how he attacks the mid lane. So post level 6, especially when Larssen also has level 6, I expect that's when Inspired will spend a lot more time around the mid lane, but otherwise, I actually think he's going to be playing around these TP windows and team fights in general.
Now, what's interesting here is how Inspired has shifted his jungle pathing a little bit. Notice that Trick has immediately gone towards the enemy blue, so he went red to blue, and he's going to be stealing away this comp as well. He feels confident that he can make this play again. Because of that early ward, he saw where Inspired started, but Inspired not actually going for the Krugs, decided not to clear that out, and was hoping that he could path up towards topside to get there a little bit earlier. But unfortunately for him, Trick is going to be here and he's going to be denied that buff.
Yeah, and it's really devastating because you saw the immediate on the way ping from Inspired back down to his Krug camp, which means he's not going to get the early respawn of his Krugs, and Krugs are so important for a jungler that really relies on hitting that level 6 fast because you get the most gold and the most experience from the camp. So I like what you're talking about, the fact that Inspired was trying to make sure that he didn't get 3 buffed, but now he's also been put behind because he didn't clear his Krug camp, skipping it to try to make that way to blue.
You can see Trick with the drive-by gank towards that middle lane, forcing Larssen to flash as the abduct abscond was going to land from Abbedagge, and it I think a lot of the early game for Schalke tends to be on Trick's shoulders. How much can he play around his laners? How much does he play around Abbedagge? And then how do they use that in moving to the side lanes? And what I'd like to see is him spending a lot of time around Larssen now that he hasn't got that flash up anymore.
But what I do think is important to recognize that a jungler is often only as strong as the laners that he has. Because if the laners aren't generating pressure, then it's often difficult for the junglers to be able to invade, set up plays. And so it's often this working together tandem thing. And while I agree that I think that Trick is the person that makes a lot happen, it's also because I feel his laners, while not the most dominant in terms of their playstyle, are actually very good at creating opportunities to allow him to set up these plays. And something that Abbedagge did was push in early, but then allow the bounce back so that Trick could come in for this early gank around the level 2, level 3 mark. So again, like that cool working together is what I think we see a lot of from Schalke in the early game.
And kind of tracking Trick's early pathing, he was looking for a gank. I'll hold it though as Inspired goes in.
Lands the stretching strike. Trick will land the smite though, and that means he's going to heal up. Finn was on his way down as well. Can just umbral dash across the wall, but Trick going in. And Odo there with a flash chase. It's easy enough for Schalke, first blood.
And that's Finn paying the price for Inspired, trying to contest that Scuttle Crab. Now the thing is he tried to take the Raptor camp because he could have taken the Scuttle Crab initially, but he peeks in, Trick turns away from the bot side, immediately cuts back up towards the Zac, and then he gets the collapse there. So Inspired's weaker jungle pick starting to impact his lanes.
Yeah, I was looking at that and I was like, yeah, Zac, mate. He landed his full combo and Trick's health barely took a dent, right? So we'll see the engage here. Notice again how the Aatrox does have push in top, so he's allowed to move first. That's the whole reason why Inspired is making this play. It ends up becoming 2 versus 1. The important thing to note, though, is that the Abbedagge is moving up through the river, and Odoamne just sacrifices farm to join up with Trick. He pings level 4 because he secures that smite onto the Scuttle Crab, and this allows them then to get a collapse onto Finn. So initially, the idea was good from Inspired, but unfortunately for him, Schalke made some great decisions to be able to punish the support that Finn tried to provide.
And early on, Schalke have taken a pretty decisive lead, about 1,000 gold ahead right now. Mid lane's pretty even, but top lane, Odoamne with that kill and a few extra CS has got himself a Seeker's Arm Guard. He has played Rumble 3 times this split and is yet to lose on it, going 5, 7, and 31 across the course of those 3 games. So expect him to have a stellar performance in this match as well.
I mean, someone on Schalke has to have level 6 strength, and this time around it's not Trick on Sejuani, but Odo on the Rumble. Again, we talk about how much they love to team fight, so as soon as that TP is off of cooldown, that's where I expect Schalke to be making plays with Rumble.
Can they dive this? I feel like it's super dangerous.
I mean, they can, doesn't mean it will work. Flash away from Woolite straight away as IgNar's tanking up the tower. The Ignite is down, but Trick is here in time. 2 kills to Schalke and Vedius. Yes, they can.
Yeah, very clean dive coming out from Schalke. Honestly, IgNar, he held the aggro perfectly. He soaked up like 2 or 3 tower shots before it swapped, and then, yes, Upset had to take 1, but the damage is already done. There was no defensive combat summoners this time for Woolite. He will use the TP to get back into lane, but there was no Inspired to offer support, which means that Rogue's bot lane ends up getting shut down.
And like you said, it really started off with the ability to juggle the tower aggro, no one going down. I thought at first it might be disaster because they split a lot of the damage, Trick going on to Woolite, while IgNar targeted VandeR with Upset there, but very squishy support just fell down.
Couldn't quite get the concussive blows stacked up on anyone either, so no one was stunned underneath that tower. And now Schalke have a sizable lead.
And this is the biggest difference from Game 1 to Game 2. We said Schalke, they didn't invest hard enough in Game 1 into the early game strategy. This time around, they were like, invest, invest, invest. Xin Zhao, Rumble, Lucian, Alistar. And now it is paying off for them, especially given that they're going up against a Zac. Now they have the right set on Larssen. Still no flash available to him, but of course he is still level 6. So IgNar, he's not going to look for that play. But main point here is that Schalke currently 2k gold ahead, and this is exactly the situation they want to find themselves in.
We also have a situation now where Inspired has slipped in underneath here. Now he is just covering for his lane and just curious here while the wave is pushed up. He wants to allow Woolite and VandeR to make sure that they don't get frozen on here.
Yet to hit that level 6 though, so it doesn't have a fight-changing ultimate as of this moment. But as you say, they're just pushing out the lane, and it looks like in the end he will back away. Hex Flash used from IgNar. Always get a little chuckle when you see one of those go sideways. Like, I'm coming, guys, I'm gonna go in. No, I'm not actually. I was just trolling you. Just joking.
IgNar was there to send a message, you know? He was about, if you approach this wave, I will flash on your face. And so they didn't approach it. They disengaged. Now Trick has made his way towards the bot side of the map. They know that they have the wave in a pretty safe space, and Abbedagge is already roaming down. So they have priority over this, and honestly, if Rogue tried to fight, they'll just lose. They have a Zac, still not level 6 yet. They don't have the damage to contest. So even if they tried, it would end in disaster.
The only good news for Rogue is that it's an ocean versus something like an Infernal or a mountain.
I don't think they should do this.
Smite comes down from Trick. IgNar jumping in, lands the pulverize, headbutt back as well, but up towards the top side. Abbedagge is fighting. The cannon comes out. Already one is done. Trick gets his 3rd kill of the game. And Rogue, yeah, probably shouldn't have fighted that one.
Yeah, I was... What did I say? Try not to fight.
Yeah, but you also said Schalke couldn't dive.
Well,
so
I said, could they dive? And
That's
the
true.
reality was that they were able to do it. But in that situation, it just, like, you're a level 5 Zac against a Lucian with a BF sword.
He's still level 5.
Fully completed warrior in chat. Oh, now they're gonna die.
IgNar hex splashes. He says, you approach your tower, I will dive you. And that's exactly what Schalke do. They get another kill on the board. Inspired trying to do what he can against Upset, but Upset just walks away. And Schalke are 5-0 up before the 10-minute mark.
And this was the game 1 game plan. This is what Schalke wanted. They put priorities into IgNar to get something like a Leona, but this Alistar pick is paying off way better for them. That early flash wasn't burnt like it was in game 1, and suddenly Schalke's bot lane looks so much more dominant.
And this is the thing, right? Coming into this series, one of the things that a lot of the casters discussed about was the bot lane. How attackable was it? And coming into this series, it was very obvious based on the draft that Schalke wanted to attack this bot lane. Frosk just talked about how they couldn't do that. This time they doubled down, and now both Woolite and VandeR are 0-2 and 0. They find themselves in a huge deficit, and it's not getting any smaller. As they tried to set up the collapse here, but Upset and IgNar were already in a position where they had priority over the river. Now Schalke are moving their attention up towards the top side. They're zoning Finn away from the farm, and you can see this gold gap was 2k only 2 minutes ago. Now it's extended to 4.
Massive advantage for Schalke, all off the back of Trick, who's been caught out, but immediately flashes forward. Larssen has to jump across the wall with his perfect execution, and Trick is having a barnstormer of a game so far.
That was a bit of a fancy footwork there, using the flash to get out of the Zac queue immediately on top of Larssen. But didn't trade flash for flash, so we'll see if Zhao needs that one for a later play.
So we now think about options for Rogue in terms of coming back into this game, and a lot of it is just you got to scale. Like, you really don't have that many options. Again, like, we keep coming back to this Zac pick because it is a huge risk. Many pro players recognize how weak he is in the early game as a champion and how exploitable he can be. A lot of the plays that Inspired made in game 1, where he was covering for his laners, setting up for counter ganks, you try to do that on Zac, it can go horribly wrong for you just because of how much limited in terms of damage that you have in terms of the early game. So Schalke are taking full advantage of this. But the important thing is that Schalke keep the pressure going, because they're a very mid-game, early to mid-game focused comp, and if this game gets to like 30 minutes, then that's when Rogue's comp has avenues back into the game.
I actually find it really curious that Schalke didn't look to rotate their bot lane towards the top side with no dragon to play around, and are effectively trading this Rift Herald for the tower plates and the bottom gold for Upset. If this is a conscious choice, which it does look like it just tells me how much more they want to invest in making sure that Upset gets snowballed ahead of the clock.
Yeah, you're completely right, because what this is going to allow Rogue to do is effectively trade in terms of plates. Now, of course, they will not get the same amount of gold, especially with this Rumble ultimate mitigating some of the pressure that they're looking to put down, but the fact that Rogue were able to get any plates at all just goes to show that Schalke was so focused on getting this bot tower that they're fine making this trade.
Only 2 plates in the top lane for Rogue compared to that 5 plate and the extra tower gold from taking down bot tower early on for Schalke. Essence Reaver already finished on Upset, and he's in a very strong position, looking for those 1-2 item spikes for the Schalke team.
I mean, frankly, it was one of those situations where it wasn't a good Rift Herald call from Rogue. Now, maybe they made the call because bot lane is done, we can't contest against this Lucian Alistar, so we need to get gold elsewhere, but that was still a cross-map play victory for Schalke, despite the fact that the monster objective went to Rogue, because now you see the item discrepancy between those AD carries. Pickaxe and BF Sword to a completed Essence Reaver and a Zeal. Upset hits like a truck right now.
Yep, and now they just want to kind of keep this momentum going. Their eyes are set on securing this tier 1 in the top lane. Plates will be falling off in about a minute's time, and that's when I really think we'll start to see the pressure accelerate for Schalke, because while they want to grab as many plates as they can, the reality is securing all these plates is very challenging. And unless you are miles and miles and miles ahead, it's very difficult to do. But once they fall off, these towers fall like paper. And when you have an Aatrox, a Lucian that is this strong, then it is very easy for them to be able to siege on these objectives.
It's also the fact that Odo's sitting at level 10, so just one level away from that level 11 and double points into his ultimate. The Dragon, another Ocean, is going to be spawning in 13 seconds, and as soon as Odo takes over to level 11, Schalke are going to have so much confidence to rock up to any team fight and just know that they can blow Rogue away. Rogue at this point in the game need to stabilize the map, start slowing things down, and funneling resources into all of their carries.
Look at the positioning of Schalke though. They've actually sent 4 members up towards the top river. It seems like that their eyes are way more focused on securing this top tower, even though the Ocean Drake is alive. There is little to no vision investment here. And I feel like Rogue's game plan is, okay, we can't fight for Drake, so we'll trade top tower for the Drake. But Schalke's like, nah. We don't care about that. We'll just take both, thanks.
Schalke have been spotted on a ward here as Inspired jumps in, Upset flashes away, the stretching strike comes out. Glacial Fissure used as well as VandeR and Rogue try and take the fight, but Upset just going to rain hell on them from the side. Inspired just about able to get away. TPs came in from Schalke, but Finn stepping forward now. Not going to look for anything more out of this.
I think the intention from Schalke was correct, that they feel confident that they can take those team fights, but unfortunately the execution didn't pay off. Rogue were able to disengage, maybe save themselves from disaster here, and they actually used a crucial teleport from Odo away from the Dragon.
Yeah, but now it looks like that they're going to move straight back towards... I am quite surprised that they're not putting more focus on the Drake, regardless of a bit of a fight in mid.
Finn almost caught out. The Equalizer used there. We'll just chip away at Finn. Larssen still has his ultimate. Pops the first proc there and manages to escape. The rest of Rogue pushing in mid. Sorry, the rest of Schalke now pushing in mid.
I mean, I think you were exactly right, Vedius. It's this idea that Schalke know that they don't need to take the Drake now. That'll be theirs whenever they want, as long as Rogue don't take it from them while they're in their base. So I think that Schalke were just trying to match what Rogue wanted to trade across the map and then somehow get everything, but unfortunately misplayed the engage up top side. Didn't find it top, didn't find it mid. We're like, okay, I guess we'll take the Ocean.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just feels like a little greedy from Schalke to try and get literally everything while also protecting everything. I feel like that there were much easier objectives for them to take. Like, after winning that fight top, they actually could have hard committed to the mid tower. But then instead, they like threw a couple ultimates out. Like, it felt like that the engage wasn't really fully committed upon. And it just feels like Schalke doesn't have a clear idea of what they want. They're just kind of like, oh, this is up. Oh, and this is up. Oh, and this is up. And okay, well, let's try and get all. Okay, I guess we'll go for that. And like, it just feels a little sloppy to me.
I totally agree with you there, Vedius. I think we saw it last week in their games versus Vitality as well, taking fights they didn't need to fight, going for skirmishes in the mid lane when there were no objectives really available for them. However, they are in a sizable lead right now. 5,000 gold ahead, a 30 CS lead in the top lane, a 40 CS lead in the bottom lane, pretty even in mid. They're in a very strong spot.
Yeah, this is their second largest gold lead of the split at 15 minutes, so Schalke are in control of this game. That said, when you don't capitalize on these team fights that Schalke have committed a lot of cooldowns to, the Rumble ultimate, the teleport, it is effectively, again, slowing down the acceleration of the game, which is what Schalke want to do, and allowing Rogue to kind of get their toe back into it. Now, Rogue are still a far ways away in terms of, never mind, I like looked up, I looked down. That's the Infinity Edge completed on Kai'Sa. Rogue are much closer than I thought they were the last time I checked their items.
Yeah, I mean, that's a gunblade now. Akali can kill Lucian.
And that was the damage. When it didn't work out for Schalke making that play topside, making that play mid, it just delays time that Rogue are able to get that.
And this also gives us a very brief, never mind, it doesn't. There's about a fight about to happen.
It was very brief. A very brief moment for you to talk as VandeR base checks. TP coming in behind here. VandeR goes golden for the moment. Glacial Fissure already used. The rest of Schalke on their way, but let's bounce, says Inspired. Larssen coming in from the side, and Upset is down. VandeR's fallen as well, but now Rogue have found the fight. Abbedagge has to flash for his life, but the chase is on. Rogue will not give it up without a fight. Rogue do not care about your 5,000 gold lead. They will take your life. Rogue come out on top.
And we have to backtrack to the point at which we said Schalke was making sloppy mistakes. Because if you give Rogue an inch, they will take a whole mile. Beautiful team fight from the side of Rogue. Schalke could not capitalize, and now even though Schalke sit with a gold gap, Rogue are looking mighty scary.
And it was a good response with the TPs, but again, that was also the key itemization that needed to come out here. So starts this team fight, excellent stopwatch, actually keeps VandeR alive for a very long time, that he's able to get off multiple forms of the concussive blows.
And it was the item spike that we were talking about. Now that Akali has that gunblade, she can assassinate the Lucian. And he just disappeared in an instant. Yep. He barely had any relevance in that fight. And look at how easy it was for Larssen. And my brief respite that I was going to use was to actually talk about this mid laner, because he is the consistent rock that exists for Rogue. Regardless of what matchup's in, he's always going even in farm, he's never costing his team the game, and because he's so reliable, he got that item spike. He was staying even with Abbedagge, and then in that team fight, we saw how relevant he was.
And it's funny because Larssen hates the idea of only being the control mage player, even though that's what, like, his identity has really been built upon. He's a great Syndra player, a fantastic Azir player, but then showcasing in this series that, hey, if you give me an assassin, I can hang with guys like Humanoid.
Now, it's important to recognize, sorry, Medic, that Schalke is in a position where they're still very strong. They still have a 3k gold lead, the Lucian still has 2 completed items, the Zhao didn't suddenly become weak. It's just that they now need to be a little bit more careful with how they pick and choose their fights, because the Akali is very relevant. Level 13, she is really online, especially with the Oblivion Orb, so if you overcommit to a fight and she's able to get onto the Lucian once again, it's going to be very difficult.
Right, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, you can watch the 2 best teams in Europe, G2 and Fnatic, fight for a spot in the final. You don't want to miss it, but you also don't want to miss these games, because Rogue and Schalke are fighting it out for that 3rd position in Athens.
Talking about that team fight execution, I think the guy that I really want to watch, is you talk about Larssen on the side of Rogue, is actually IgNar on the side of Schalke. I think it's really important if they're using this Alistar to start fights to keep people locked down on the Rumble ultimate, or if he's going to hang back by upset, try to let this Lucian kite them out and try to deny Akali when she dives into the backline. The issue is how long can you actually deny Akali from finding her mark due to all of her tools to dive back there, hit the shroud, just hang out, wait for the cooldowns, assassinate you anyway.
Especially when Larssen is such a good Akali player. He's played it 4 times, won 3 of those, only died 4 times in the course of those 4 games. Now Schalke are looking for a little bit of a fight here as IgNar has a flank position. Odo there as well. Has the equalizer. Face check from Trick, but the Infernal Chains doesn't hit. Odo still looking for that flank position. Inspired, maybe caught out. Does have the flash if he wants to jump away, but instead will use the Let's Bounce. Equalizer coming up, but with the Unbreakable, but IgNar lands onto the Zac. He's already into his bloblets. Larssen trying to take down the Alistar before any more can happen, but Trick has already killed his enemy jungler. Trick uses the Crescent Guard to knock them back, and Rogue cannot find their connection in the fight.
And it's IgNar that's able to go over the wall, make sure that they can pick up some of the kills, and they do win the fight, but it doesn't translate into the tower. It does mean that they get control over another dragon. Unfortunately, double Ocean into Cloud probably isn't what they were hoping for.
I mean, the bright side for Schalke is they actually pushed in the bot wave, and it crashed into the tower. So now that's starting to bounce back, and you can see Odoamne immediately pats that way again to push in another wave, try and deny as much farm away from Finn as possible. And now that gap between the top laners is starting to get bigger and bigger. But let's dive back into this replay. We can see that a lot of this starts off with Finn and Inspired trying to get the engage, but then they collapse onto Inspired.
Yeah, and then there's the Rumble ultimate across. IgNar comes over the wall, make sure that Inspired isn't going to make it out of this fight.
And you can see that Larssen here is really the only player that can impact the outcome of the fight, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't have a front line that he can play around, nor does he have easy access onto the back line. So while he's primed and ready to deal all this damage, unfortunately for him, there's no real opportunity.
And I often forget about this whenever I see a Zhao, because a lot of people always just focus on his ability in the early game, but he's actually a great disengage tool, which sounds counterintuitive because you think about Xin as constantly going in, but with his ultimate in tandem with an Alistar, it's actually a lot of tools and resources that Schalke have that they can disengage his Akali repeatedly. It doesn't just have to be about IgNar, they can use him as a hard engage tool as long as Trick has that ultimate ready.
And when you put him into the hands of someone like Trick, who has 4 LEC titles under his belt, you have to expect him to step up to the occasion. A lot of people won't remember Trick when he was an MVP, when he was such a good player, but he kind of started the G2 era in League of Legends in Europe, and now we're seeing him once again step up to the plate and really help develop this Schalke team from a team that struggled a lot in spring.
Well, this team still needs to find a win here in this series, and of course we are only in game 2, but Schalke, when you compare how dominant they looked in the early game to how their mid game has looked, you can see quite a stark contrast. And right now, the biggest advantage they have is that they're sitting with a 3,500 goal lead, which is obviously going to make it difficult for Rogue to come back. But as we mentioned, at this point, last game, Rogue was in a position to secure the Baron and then look to end the game. Schalke should be in a similar position with the comp that they have. They should have been taking all of these ADA towers down already, but we're only 1-1 in ADA towers. All the goal difference exists because of the farm difference and the kill difference. Outside of that, in terms of map control, the game is very even, which is a very comfortable spot for Rogue to be in, especially as the Baron is spawning soon. And Schalke's comp actually is not the best at securing it because they don't have the strongest front line. They have to rely on Alistar, who's also one of their primary engage tools. So what's better for them is to actually deny a lot of vision around the Baron pit and force Rogue to come and check it rather than starting it and then using it to turn and fight.
I feel like there might be a dive here. I do want to kind of continue this conversation about how both these compositions approach something like a Baron pit. For Schalke's comp, you kind of alluded to it. It's really hard to turn off the Baron. Once you're engaged in it, you kind of have to stick onto it. Whereas if you look at the tools on Rogue's composition, the fact that you have an Akali, that you have a Kai'Sa with an ultimate, that you have Aatrox who's very mobile, if Rogue actually ever starts the Baron, it's much safer for them to disengage from it and immediately turn towards a fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that, unfortunately for Rogue, they're not really in a position to start the Baron. But I do agree with you that in the event that they do, it's a lot easier for them to turn away and then look for a fight. We are in a brief pause. It was thrown up by VandeR, so we'll look to try and get that resolved relatively quickly.
And during the pause, I think we can take a moment. You've kind of evaluated the state of the game. Take a breath, yeah.
Take a chill.
It's quite warm in here, I've got to admit. I'm a little bit of a sweaty boy.
You guys good at juggling? Can you juggle?
No.
No?
I can juggle my responsibilities.
Can you juggle? I actually, like, when I was younger, for some reason, I had a massive fascination with juggling, and I did learn to juggle with 3 balls.
I'll be honest, this wasn't the way I expected this conversation to go.
Well, we had a brief pause, and I thought you guys might want to learn a little bit more about me.
Did you do any other circus tricks? Can you dive through a ring of fire?
No.
I can ride a unicycle.
Oh, you can ride a unicycle? That's cooler than anything you can do.
It took me a while to, like, grow. I was like 14, 15 when I hit my growth spurt, which means that I could fit through my dog flap for many years, and that's how I used to get into my house. Yeah. See? There you go. Cool little trick.
It brings a whole new meaning to the word dog chow. Let's get back onto Summoner's Rift. Vedius can stop talking about fitting through different animal entrances.
The pause only lasted like 5 seconds.
Yeah, Vedius
perfect comedic timing. Now, let's get back into the game. We'll notice that the Drake spawns in about 2 minutes' time. That could be a big point of contention for both these teams. Side lanes are trying to be in control for both sides right now as we're seeing a bit of a reset. I'm looking at some of the items that have been completed, and I'm waiting to see if there are any big spikes. Ooh, I can see LS looking at Larssen's build and being proud as a Void Staff is completed before the Morellonomicon. With a lot of magic resistance coming out from the side of Schalke, I do also like this early itemization choice coming out from him, and it's going to give him a lot more backline threat, especially against the likes of Upset, who has already early itemized the Hex String.
Somewhere LS on Twitter is like, whoa, finally!
It's like a mid laner I can be proud of.
I'm pretty sure Larssen built Ludens on his ear, though, once.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not allowed.
You hate to see
For now, we see Finn pushing in the bottom lane. Abbedagge, Larssen actually roaming down and going to meet up with IgNar in the river. Forced back just a little bit by him. But a good thing for Rogue is they're still maintaining some vision control in the river for now, as Schalke will go in and try and clear that out and maybe look to set up around this Baron.
It feels like Schalke are going to continue shifting from mid lane over into the top lane until they can push these towers down and find Rogue out of position. So Rogue were kind of just 5-man ARMing a bit into the mid lane, pushing waves back and forth, and Schalke were just going to sit in this position, continue to rinse and repeat this play until one of the towers fell over.
The biggest problem, never mind, because it looks like we're going to have a fight in
There's definitely a fight.
Trick has the flank position, teleport coming in here. Trick goes forward, knocks Woolite back. Woolite will use the Void Tickets, get towards the back line, and now Odoamne may be in trouble. Larssen low, Abbedagge low. Oh, back by the Infernal Chains. The Ignite is ticking, and Finn in the end will take the kill, but it's answered by 2 in return by Schalke.
And it looks like Schalke walk away with 2 kills over their counterparts. Rogue were not ready for that fight, and honestly, Schalke had a great setup. They had the TP flank coming out from Abbedagge. They had the initial engage onto the backline, and Trick with a fantastic ultimate just completely split up the Rogue lineup, where from the get-go, Rogue were on the defensive.
Great stop there by IgNar. Inspired was jumping in, stretching strike, they're pulling him back. Larssen's TP'd in behind this, and now Upset is in for a world of hurt. Shut down. Larssen 3-0-2 on this Akali.
But the big issue was that Odo went and responded to the bot wave. And if Odo had been there in the mid lane, maybe that doesn't happen. But Upset and Schalke don't keep track of the teleport timer from Larssen. They don't keep track of Inspire.
Going for it. Trick just secured the Drake. They know where he is. Okay, they don't want to take
Don't
the
do
gamble.
that.
All right.
Ward came into the back of the pit as they were starting it up.
Honestly, though, I felt like there was a window there if it weren't for the fact that Upset's TP was available. But in any case, we can see the engage here. Look at how Trick engages, gets a great ulti up onto Woolite, and then Abbedagge comes in from the flank, which means that this Rumble ultimate actually does so much damage to the front line, which is VandeR and Inspired. This means that only Larssen is there to, again, kind of deal as much damage as he can. And while Finn does pick up a single kill, unfortunately, it's not enough. Schalke secured 2 on the back end, and ultimately, it's a 2-for-2 because Larssen then commits his TP, but a really well-played fight from the side of Schalke.
Poor Abbedagge tried twice to get over that wall. Couldn't do it.
Larssen needs a whole culling here. Inspired was looking to slingshot into the fight, but decides that the tower is just going to fall and leaves it.
We don't often think about Lucian as kind of one of the AD carries that really shreds through towers. Normally you think of guys like, or champions like Tristana, but because of his double tap passive and then using the culling like that, if he's ever able to approach a tower and there's no minion wave to eat it up, he's actually really good at shredding through those structures and zoning teams off of them.
Inspired has found IgNar.
There's nothing else to use that stretching strike on, so we won't be able to make IgNar kiss with anyone.
Now, one of the things that Schalke struggled with earlier was to get deep vision towards the enemy jungle. A large part of it was because of this tower that was existing for a long time in the top lane. Now, however, you'll notice that they've been able to get way more vision control inside the enemy jungle, as our observers are highlighting for us now. This gives them a lot more control, but the problem is they're not maintaining control over the mid lane, which is allowing Rogue to then gain access to the river so that Schalke can't really threaten this Baron.
Issue for Finn here as he's been caught out by Trick. Odoamne on the chase as well. The Inferno Chains come down, but Trick is able to dodge away from them, and with the equalizer, Finn will burn down Trick with his 6th kill of this game.
Good punish there from the side of Schalke. It looks like that nothing is going to be done from the side of Rogue. They were looking for upsets, but they're not going to find anything for now.
Yeah, they missed their window there as IgNar is also standing off on the flanks. So the window was while Trick was down bottom. If Inspired had pulled the trigger there, tried to make the engagement while multiple resources from Schalke had been expended bottom, maybe try to force a TP out of Odo to respond. But good play by Schalke.
Now Rogue are in a bit of a sticky situation because Finn doesn't have teleport, Larssen doesn't have teleport. Now you look across the side and you're like, well, Abbedagge and Upset don't. But the problem is Odoamne does, which means that he can keep threatening on a side and look for another potential flank team fight in the mid lane.
But what is the likelihood that they actually do that? Because I agree with you. That's a very easy play. You have the advantage of having the TP cooldown, but we say this all the time about Schalke. Even when they have massive advantage with the ability to play side lane, often they'll pull their side laner to group up, especially when it's something like a level 16 Rumble.
He's grouped up with the team for us.
Yeah, he's,
but they could. They could, in theory, be taking advantage of that.
He's going down towards bottom lane.
Okay, okay.
He's going for a safari.
So, I mean, the risk again, so I'm going to bring up the minimap once more, because again...
Oh, no.
So, okay, we don't... Meanwhile, just focus on the minimap right now, and look at how there is no vision in the bot side of the map. So, the risk
he's waiting for Trick.
He does have is that if he then pushes this far up, there's a real risk of a collapse from the side of Rogue. So, he can't just blindly push in this wave. But, you know, he is patiently waiting for his jungle. Now that he has the support that he needs, now he's actually looking to move towards the bot side of the map, and now he can more safely look to push.
Okay, so 30 minutes in, Schalke have about a 6,000 to 7,000 gold lead on average. We have an Infernal Drake up in a minute. Schalke with triple Ocean, basically a Warmog's armor on each of their carries. This is going to be very difficult for Rogue to navigate.
So, reminder, we just talked about how Baron is kind of the primary focus for Schalke here, but the options that they have is that they can make a pick with IgNar hunting here, so they can play bottom with the TP advantage, maybe try to get a pick on someone when they cheat towards Finn and Woolite down here, or Rogue commit too many resources to the bottom side of the map, and instantly Schalke will try to pull the trigger on Baron.
And although we're approaching the later portion of the game and we said Rogue have a scaling advantage, Schalke are sitting in the driver's seat as Trick is called out. Abbedagge going forward, steals away the Glacial Fissure, knocks it up, and this will be Inspired falling. He goes into the Globulus, but there's nothing more he can do. Odoamne has the flank, and with the equalizer, he locks up Woolite. Woolite almost takes out Odoamne. Finn here with the fight as well, but already Larssen's gone down. His first death of this game. Finn trying to defend, but Upset going in for the double kill. Dodges out, and that's Baron for Schalke.
Huge team fight win coming out from the side of Schalke. They end up shutting down 4 members from Rogue. And notice that Odoamne didn't even expend his TP to join the fray. As we jump into the replay, it all starts with Inspired face-checking the river without support from his team. While VandeR is there, it's very easy for Schalke to take this engage. And again, notice on the minimap that the Rumble has already joined. He then drops this great equalizer that prevents Woolite and VandeR from considering to support the duo that is being engaged upon. The damage is done, and by the time that the Aatrox arrives, it's too little, too late. This means Schalke can go and secure themselves a Baron.
That should be pretty easy for Schalke now. 10,000 gold lead. There's an Infernal Dragon for them. Pretty much at full build across the board if you look at it. You've got 4 completed items on Upset, 3.5 completed items on Abbedagge, and a very, very strong rest of the team. Now they can look down towards this bottom lane. IgNar once again searching for kills, hunting for his prey in the enemy jungle.
And frankly, the Zac pick just has not worked out for Rogue. They were punished in the early game. It meant that in the mid game that they weren't able to find the necessary team fights that they did outside of that one glimmer of hope into that top side. But otherwise, Schalke looked pretty confident to close the game out at this Baron. If there's a team or if there's a dive from IgNar or a nicely placed Rumble ult, that could be lights out for Rogue.
We discussed earlier whether Schalke showed their peak last week against Vitality. Vedius, you thought they had more to show us. It seems like this game is an indication that they have been keeping a little bit in reserve. Now pushing in 2 lanes, Abbedagge in the mid. Trick and Upset down towards the bottom side with Odo and IgNar just roaming around. There's the equalizer once again. They're looking for this inhibitor tower. That's all that Schalke want. Break the base open, and now they'll go towards the inhib. They'll take that too.
Rogue trying to live to fight another day there. Don't want to overcommit. They know that if they make a single mistake, it's game over and looking to game 3.
It might just be that even if they don't make a mistake, because Schalke are going in. IgNar with the headbutt pulverize engage. Inspired looking for the long shot, elastic slingshot, won't land it. And meanwhile, in the midst of it all, Finn has fallen. Schalke are just going through Rogue one by one. Now with 2 inhibitors down, they will look towards those Nexus towers.
And Schalke feeling confident after this win. Yes, they slowed down in the mid game, but Rogue are the final answer.
Larssen trying to get on towards the backline, but already Inspired has fallen. Upset jumping forward, and Larssen will take down one, and now Upset's very low as well. Larssen can't quite get there, and Upset's just going to heal up. He's in the Twilight Shroud, but Trick is on the chase. Good flip away there by Larssen, but it sacrifices his base. The Nexus towers will fall, and Schalke are looking to equalize us. 1-1 is the scoreline after they take down the Nexus.
We've got a series.
We had a series before this as well, you realize?
No, it actually looks competitive now.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I'll give you that. We have a much more competitive series after Schalke showed us that if they get an early game lead with an early game comp, they can close it out.
And that seems to have been the plan. We said it time and time again. You saw it in draft in game number 1. You saw it in draft in game number 2. Schalke are trying to contest and shut down this bottom lane. So with both teams knowing that this has been the focus so far in the series, what do we do to change it up? I have a feeling it's probably going to be the Zac pick.
And this was the thing for me. I felt like that Rogue limited their options because of this Zac. You already touched on it, Frosk, about how in the early game they fell extremely far behind, and then coming into the mid game, they didn't have the power to contest a lot of these fights. And while we saw a couple of opportunities from Rogue, a lot of it just came down to poorly executed fights from Schalke, which they very quickly cleaned up as the game progressed. We saw a lot of great teleport flanks coming out from them. We saw a lot of fantastic ultimates from Odoamne, yet to be defeated on the Rumble pick. And it feels like that Schalke, with their doubling down on early game investment, worked out. But we do have to mention that there were some sloppy setups from the side of Schalke. I felt like some of their objective play was not as clean as it could have been. I felt like the game dragged on for much longer than they would have liked. And I feel like that Schalke overall won't be super happy with their performance in this game. And hopefully throughout the rest of the series, they can look to clean this up, because if that Zac wasn't a factor, if the draft was slightly different from Rogue, maybe there could have been more answers for them to come back in.
And that's the balancing act we start to strike. Will Rogue be able to find a way to deal with this early game if they change the Zac, or will Schalke be able to clean up that mid game and then just roll over Rogue in the next few matches? It's a dilemma or a balancing act you see in all of these series, and I think so far the series has been defined by whether Schalke can get a strong early game lead. We'll see if that continues to be the case in the next few games.
I think that there might be an answer around this Lucian. There's been so much Kai'Sa priority, and it feels like, you know, at one area, VandeR and Woolite can go backstage and say, you know, it worked in game number 1, so we can keep allowing this Lucian pick to come through if Upset feels like that's the firepower that he needs, or if it's going to be continuing to pinch bans at the top side. A reminder, there was, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 bans leveraged towards the top side of the map.
Yeah, there certainly was. It does bring into question, maybe you have to leave the cannon open and take away the Rumble, because definitely seems like a big power pick for Odoamne. We'll see how this series shapes up, but it's great to see that it's living up to the expectations, that it will be close, not entirely sure which way it will go, and there's still a lot left to be had from this series.
Yeah, a spot on the line. Oh dear, I'm going to start that again. A spot in Athens is on the line tonight as Schalke and Rogue are tied after 2 games. Join Shox, Ender, and Deficio for picks and bans after this. I mean, they can, doesn't mean it will work. Flash away from Woolite straight away as IgNar's tanking up the tower. The Ignite is down, but Trick is here in time. 2 kills to Schalke, and Abbedagge has to flash for his life, but the chase is on! Rogue will not give it up without a fight. Rogue do not care about your 5,000 gold lead. They will take your life. Woolite almost takes out Odoamne. Bin here with the fight as well, but already Larssen's gone down. His first death of this game. Bin trying to defend, but upset going in for the double kill. So the Nexus towers will fall, and Schalke are looking to equalize us. 1-1 is the scoreline after they take down the Nexus.
You don't have a chance against me. I can calculate 90 trillion moves in advance. Not fair. Not fair.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Ready for the finals?
Experience the LEC Finals in Athens with Shell V-Power.
Come and run again. We wanna do